Attention, Siren Crew. Season 10 starting now. What's fashion? Welcome to Season 10, Episode 5 with me, your host, Lashanti the Siren. And today's guest is Eustacia Jennings, who is an environmental health and safety professional. Welcome to the show, Stacey.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's good to be here. You could call me Stacey, as you said. Eustacia is just too formal for us sirens today. I literally my hair is still wet. I came out of the water like about an hour and a half ago.
You washed up like this.
Oh, yes, we do stuff like this. It's so good to be here.
It's very exciting to have you as a world traveler and to talk about the topics today. Before we dive into some of the work that you've recently done, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background, some of your experiences, and what got you into this field in the first place?
Oh, no problem. So I always like to say it started in my mother's womb. My mom was actually pregnant with me when she was a student at the then Teachers College, UB, College of the Bahamas, and she was taking a man and environment class. And so I was in her tummy and she's swooping through, wetlands on top of, wastewater treatment plants and learning about the environment. And I always like to say that's when the seed was planted in me to love and care for the environment. So that's where I like to start. But I wanted to be a doctor, right? Because back in the 90s, nobody was, you didn't hear about being an environmentalist, as a job, as a career path per se. And so I didn't really know that was an option. And so that's my mom saying good afternoon now. But yeah, I went off to school. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but then that wasn't really working out for me. I really was scared of blood and I have too much empathy. And I was like, okay, I have to find something else that works where I can help people or the environment. And I still didn't know what I was going to do. I did chemistry at College of the Bahamas. I, graduated Governor's General's Award, top of the class and everything, went to McGill in Montreal, Canada, culture shock, cold. It was frozen, not just movie, just frozen that first year. I was just like, wow. And I did chemistry there also with math. And then in my second year, I came home in the summer. I was working for Mr. Holowesco and Lynn Holowesco. And at the time she was senator for, and she was ambassador for the environment. And I was working at a law office and she had all these, protocols like Montreal Protocol and all these Kyoto Protocol and other things. And I started, reading up on stuff. And I was like, I want to do this. This looks interesting. I love this. And I love the environment. I was a pathfinder. I always spent time in nature, loved the beach, loved the water. Daddy always took us to the beach. And so I went back to the school the next semester and I picked up environmental as a minor. And the rest is history, as they like to say. And yeah, I loved it. And then I went off to do my master's at University of Houston, Clear Lake in environmental management. And then went on to pursue a PhD in environmental science at University of North Texas. Haven't really completed that. I'm still ABD. Life got in the way. But I love the environment. I love nature. I love all things about making sure that we preserve what we have for the next generation.
I love that. So what do you think it was about the world that made you want to start traveling it?
Yeah, so, I love the environment, at home, in the Bahamas, we have sun, sand, and sea, and it was like, yeah. And I went all through the Bahamas. I worked for BPL and I got a chance to go to all the power stations, so all the islands for 2 years. Every year I had to go to each one. And so I really covered the Bahamas. I was like, what else is out there? What else can I see? And I love my country, but, when I went to Montreal, in Canada, that was a culture shock. And I was like, whoa, mountains and snow. What else is there? And so I went on my first European tour in 2018-19. And it was just when I really got the international travel bug, because for 10 days, I saw 7 or 8 different countries. I met a whole lot of awesome people. And it was like, I want to do this more. This is just amazing. And literally it was like, okay, every birthday I'm going to spend in another country. Okay, every Christmas and birthday. Okay, every Christmas, birthday, Easter. How about all the time? As much as I possibly can. And that's kind of where it started, and it just kept growing.
I love that. And I love that it started off by you seeing, you traveled nationally a lot, because, a lot of times, a lot of Bahamians, one, they don't really even want to travel. They don't want to see the world. But also sometimes, or they don't leave their island at all, and they've never even seen some of the other islands that we have in the Bahamas, which, as you've probably seen, they are so different as well. Like Nassau looks completely different than Cat Island, than Long Island, etc.
Awesome. I live in Andros right now. I'm outside, and outside it's like, oh, I love it. I love it here, but each island is so unique, and that's what made me think like, okay, if our islands are so unique, like what else is so unique about, different parts of the world, and I got to see mountains and rivers, things we don't have here, right?
Mhm.
And just lakes, and we have some lakes, but it was just amazing, and I love it.
So, how would you say that your travels around the world has shaped your professional work environment and experience?
I think it's given me a global mindset. So I approach a lot of the problems that we have, even locally, like globally. And I look to see what's going on, around the world. Because a lot of them, when I travel, I realize a lot of other countries, especially small island developing states like ours, face similar problems. Faced with the same issues. Like when I go to, Sri Lanka and Honduras, they're having mangrove restoration projects, and they have mangrove destruction and issues, sea level rise and coral bleaching, etc. And I was like, it's not just us, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look to see what other countries are doing and adapt it to fit us, and see what we can learn from them, because some of them are further ahead in the process or have more resources. And so we don't have to start from scratch. We can adapt a lot of the tools and techniques that they're doing. And I love to see that when I go to other countries. Even though I'm traveling for vacation, I'm always working, right? Especially now that I work for myself and I'm working while I travel. And sometimes I combine them with work trips. I always, I have an eye out because I'm also a safety professional looking at safety things. But I always do, I'm a nature lover. So I'm always doing nature hikes, or out on a pond or a lake or in a mangrove, canoeing, something. So it's really, it's really looking at it from a global standpoint and seeing how we can address some of the issues here that we have in the Bahamas.
I feel like when you're really passionate about what you do, as you clearly are, and as a lot of environmentalists are, we are always working, right? Like when you travel, when you do anything, you're always thinking about well, what's going on in this environment or what's really happening here. And so I almost wonder, throughout your travels, are there any countries that you think closest comparison to us?
Yeah, oh, there are a couple actually, especially in the Caribbean. There are a lot in the Caribbean that are close with. But when I went over even to the Pacific, there were a lot of countries that had some of the same issues, Fiji and Maldives, etc. And I was just like, they're on the other side of the world, and they're having, not hurricanes, they call it typhoons, but they're having like some of the same issues, sea level rise, etc. And I look at see what they're doing with the mangroves, like I mentioned, and it's like, yeah, it's very similar. Some of the other countries, especially if they're still connected to other countries, they're not fully independent, and so they have resources from their mother country. Like Turks and Caicos has resources from U.S. and then some of the Dutch islands. They have that support from larger countries that can help them, but we don't necessarily have that. And then we also, because our GDP is so high, we don't qualify sometimes for some of the funding, and so we're at a disadvantage sometimes, where they place us, but we have facing the similar issues. So it's really good to look to see what they're doing, and try to adapt and replicate some of those things if it fits.
Right. And so after seeing what all these different countries that are similar to us and have similar challenges are doing, what are some of the things that you think the Bahamas is doing well?
So I think we're doing well when it comes to, especially now, we're big on the climate change issue and getting that word out, right? Getting our young people engaged, making sure we're at the forefront with that. And I think that's great, especially in the last couple of years, what's been happening there. And I think we're doing that well. I think we need to keep that same kind of energy when it comes to other areas, and we have other areas that we need to focus on when it comes to environmental protection. Like I'm working on a lot of things with multilateral agreements with the Minamata Convention, mercury, and then POPs, persistent organic pollutants and pesticides, etc. And it's not necessarily the same level of attention, but there's still threats and there are issues that harm not just our environment, but also human well-being. So I think that we need to start to pay more attention to some of those same things. And then on the tourism side, I know you had Taran last week and he was talking about, tourism and sustainability. And I think that's an area where we're starting to gain traction and looking at ecotourism and sustainable tourism options, because that's what a lot of countries are doing. And a lot of people are actually looking for, like myself, when I travel, I'm looking for green options when I travel. I'm looking for eco resorts that are, flagged that way so I could stay there instead. And I'm looking for, more nature activities when I travel. And I think we need to start tapping into that and pushing that even more to our, the persons who want to come to the Bahamas. And I think we can tap into another market that way also.
And this just reminded me of a news article that I saw earlier today that, sorry if I'm taking the conversation a little to pivot, but a new type of tourism is pushing because of climate change, where people are now trying to visit the places that are vanishing soon.
Right.
And just like, that just blew my mind. So there are countries that are aware of the fact that, like this river is going to overrun soon, so come and visit it now before, it's too late. And they're pitching that as a tourism product. And it's kind of scary, but I get, I get the marketing behind it. But I would love to hear some of your thoughts on things like that. And if you think that that's a direction that the Bahamas might have to do at some point.
I don't think we should do it in that way because it's a scare tactic. The fact of the matter is we could vanish at any time. Like a hurricane could come through and just destroy one of our islands, like you saw with Grand Bahama and Dorian, and people didn't get a chance to see it. That happened to me. I remember I had a trip planned to Dominica, and I didn't go because I was sick or something. And like a couple of months later, they had Hurricane Maria that totally devastated the island, and I was so bummed. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get to see it when it was so beautiful and before that happened. Also, like I was in Ukraine a couple of months before Russia decided to blow it up, and I was just like, wow, I'm so glad I got a chance to see how beautiful this country was and experience it before this devastation happened, and I'm still praying for them and hoping that they rebound and something happens. But anything can happen at any point in time. And that's why I always believe if you have the opportunity to travel and you want to go somewhere, do it. Don't put it off, because you don't know what's going to happen to you, to the country, to whatever. Like we think, everything's going to be around for, all the time, but that's not necessarily the case, and it helps us to put things into perspective. And I don't necessarily think, I don't believe in pitching it that way. Like hurry up, see the Bahamas before, sea level disappear. How about hurry up, come and help us to do things, engage in some project or support us in helping us to adapt, because we're vulnerable, and pitching it in that way. But not necessarily just to get people, because then you'll have these flock of people coming and then it's not sustainable. And then nothing happens, for years. It's like, I thought y'all said you were disappearing. Y'all ain't gone yet. Like what's happening, because that happens also, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Interesting. And I know, and I'll try to bring us back on track here. I know you were talking about some of the things that obviously you think the Bahamas is doing well, and a part of that is our shift towards ecotourism and our more climate change and climate action consciousness with youth. But what are some of the things that you think you've seen in other countries that the Bahamas can replicate and help to make our country a little bit better when it comes to conservation and sustainability?
Yeah, and I think even in the same area, like tying conservation more to our number one product, to tourism, and pitching it even more, and things that we can do to even enhance that. I look like when I go, turtle releases, and there's such a big push, and they're very intentional on certifying their green or eco resorts and activities, and they have them tied to organizations, right? And so you're supporting not just tourism, but you're also supporting environmental conservation in the country and making those connections, right? And so you're not just leaving tourism dollars with your regular people who are part of the tourism market, but you're also helping to support conservation and environmental, because sometimes it doesn't trickle down, right? The tourism dollar doesn't necessarily trickle down and end up going towards conservation. So making those direct linkages helps that to go that way, and driving people more towards the national parks and making sure that they are getting that money and they're getting that support. There are also some other things. There's so many things that I've seen that I really love. I'm starting to chronologue them and maybe come up with a book or essay and do a deeper dive into it.
Oh.
Especially some of my favorite countries, and most of my favorite countries, it's because of the environmental aspect or the nature aspect. Yeah, so my favorite country, and I always, every podcast, everyone who they already know, and if people could put it inside the chat if they've heard me, they know which one it is. I talk about it all the time. It's Bhutan. Like people was like, Bhutan needs to make you like their tourist ambassador or something. Like I love this little country so much, and most people are like, Bhutan, where is Bhutan? Like how do you spell that? I'm like Bhutan, Bhutan. And it's in the Himalayas, tucked between like Nepal and Bangladesh and India in that area. They're a beautiful little country, and they only opened up to tourism like maybe in 1970s or so. They were like just very locked down, and then even then they had like a limit on how many people can come in. And then they started opening up more, and they have a sustainable development fee that you have to pay per night. It's $200 a night just to get into the country. That's not your hotel, your certified driver that you have to have, your certified guide that you have to have, or your hotels. That's just to get into the country. Exactly. I only afforded to spend like 3 nights there because it was so expensive. But they do not because even though tourism is one of them number one industries, it's a type of tourist that they want. They want quality over quantity. They want people who really want to come there and be there and really explore and who are going to respect us. If you spend that kind of money, you're really interested in going there, right? Like it is
play around.
And then there's only like 2 airlines that fly there. There are only like 20 pilots that can make the landing because you have to fly through the Himalayas and over Mount Everest to get in there. And so it's really remote. It's so worth it. It's awesome. They look at the gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product as they're measuring. They have a minister of happiness in their cabinet. That's how serious they are about it. And so it's based on 4 different pillars. So it's about sustainable development, also cultural narratives, the natural environment, and good governance. That's what their country is built on. So nature's in there twice, environment and sustainable development. And then, yes, I love it too. And then they have 9 domains of gross national happiness, which are like education, living standard, health, psychological well-being, community vitality, cultural diversity. And I love the cultural diversity. Like everywhere you went, everyone was in their native dress. In the food store, at the schools, everyone was in their native. And I got a chance to wear it too. They left one inside my hotel room and the receptionist came and helped me put it on and everything. And I felt so much a part. Like I went to dinner in it and everything. I was like, I love it here. Can I stay? And y'all not charge me $200 a night? Like, can I stay?
Are they gonna waive the fee? Like maybe if you bring 2 friends, like
they did have a special on, like if you stay for 4 nights, you get 4 nights free to encourage longer stays. And I was like, yeah, just one more night. I was like, oh, I should have known that before. I don't have the time. But, it was just so amazing. And then time, use, good governance. And then again, ecological diversity and resilience. And so that's what they really focus on. And they have set aside, like, I think it's about 45%, any certain percentage of their country that they will not touch with their forests and its protection. I mean, and the hills and just greenery and everything. The people were nice and peaceful. And they're not a very rich country. They're kind of poor, but you wouldn't know it. Like they are just happy and content and they are thriving and they share that with you. And I felt like I was like, I'm taking this with me. Like I'm adapting this in my own life, like money. It's not all about money. It's really about other aspects and looking at what's your priorities and then focusing on those. And then the money will come, And so it was just a life change. That trip was a life changing one. Just being there for 3 days in that country. And they're a Buddhist nation. So they have all the, I know, right? Everybody adds Bhutan to their list now. All your coins, you're going to need plenty coins.
And make sure it's at least
listen, yeah, and they still have the special on. So yeah, it was just amazing. And they have a lot of festivals going on. I missed a festival. They have festivals all the time, and they have these prayer flags everywhere, all around the country. Because it's a Buddhist nation, but they're very spiritual, but they're very respectful and they're very delightful. And I did not see one other person of color there the whole 3 days I was there. Just to put that in there, I did not. And I could count the amount of Americans on my hands, and most of them were on the flight with me when we came in. So it's not like overrun with tourists. Most of their tourists come from India, and so they put a moratorium on them also because they're right next door and they can drive over on the border and stuff. So they had a lot of Indian tourists, but it was amazing. I loved it. A lot of hiking and oh, it was just beautiful. I love Bhutan. I
Um,
love it.
I
I
think
want to go
very
back.
So I guess as far as if you had to take lessons learned from Bhutan to us, it would be more around that happiness and stuff, I guess.
Oh yeah, the gross national happiness, and not domestic, and looking at different areas, and even us, we have a national development plan also, and those are some of the same four pillars in our national implementation plan. But it's go how you go about implementing that, and what emphasis you give on each pillar, right? And how and what's the plans that support those pillars, and that's what we really have to look at. And I think unless you have a plan, they say you don't have no plan, you plan to fail. And we have to have a national plan that's not political, that translates beyond different parties or whoever comes in power, so that there's continuity and you could see growth and development. And most of the countries that I've seen that are thriving or doing it well is because they have a national plan. They have this vision and they have people that are carrying it out in different areas, right? And then the people have caught, that's the thing, the people have caught the vision and they're carrying out and they take ownership of it. And it's just wonderful to see.
And that's the key thing that you said right there. One, they have a plan in place, but they carry it out, and then they get the people involved who take that ownership on. Because I think one of our challenges in the Bahamas is that as soon as government change is over, it's like we have a hard reset every 5 years. It's like for some reason we just can't get that continuity, and I think a lot of that is because there's no ownership of it outside of these governmental parties. So I would love to see. I mean, we know that the NGOs are working very hard on these things, but it really takes the government putting these things into place with sustainable funding that goes beyond their party's term, so
Right.
that it can still run in that in-between time, because
Exactly.
it only takes that in-between time of no funding and no action to ruin an entire plan. Ruin
Mm-hmm.
it. So,
It does, because I have this thing. If I have projects and it's coming up to election year or whatever, I hurry up trying to finish it as quick as possible because you just don't know what's going to happen, right?
exactly.
And if you stay in limbo, you're in limbo until the next party, they learn about it and then they decide, oh yeah, it's okay, and we want to continue it. Else you're just in limbo. So I'm like, let's hurry up, get this done, because once the election happens, if the government changes, you don't know what's going to happen. They have to have new committees and this and new directors, and it just slows you down, puts you backwards, and then you have to come back, and then we're like, oh yeah, we want to do this. Like, okay, we just wasted a year and a half.
And now you got to do all kind of work again,
start again, and it's really frustrating. And so we have to get to a point where it becomes more of a national issue and less political. And I don't know how we're going to do that, but we have to stop politicizing everything, because it's really impeding our progress as a nation in everything, especially our environmental progress. And so I hope we get to the growth and maturity where we reach to that point where we can do that. And that's why you see it with places like Bhutan. They have continuity because they have a king, and he's there, but they also have parliaments and they change hands and everything. Mm-hmm. But ultimately that monarchy, he's kind of always there. So he makes sure that, kind of that everything else is still continuing. These are things. And so you're going to make sure this is what your party is doing and working towards making sure that these still get carried out,
And not to even have a shameless plug, because it is truly shameless. And that's one of the things that I have for my nonprofit, Bahamas Conservation Connection, because I think if we as a community have that stronger collaboration and connection outside of just projects and funding, then we could even be the ones that help to hold on to that ownership of these projects and ensure continuity outside of the shifting governments above our heads. So shameless plug, but I follow the vision. I believe in the vision. I believe in the future.
I know. I have the same thing because, like in Andrews, I'm doing a project right outside here in Davis Creek, and so once the project finishes and the funding from GEF finishes, like what happens? So that's why I'm working hard to make sure like the community takes hold of it, and it's a community-based project, and that they can maintain and monitor it. So in case the government doesn't have funding or doesn't get funding somewhere else to do it, that it still continues on all the work that we did. It doesn't just go to naught, and so you have to get that community buy-in. You have to get the people involved and have them take ownership of these projects and the issues, because it's benefiting them, right? And then they can agitate also for further funding and support. And then sometimes if the government doesn't come, the private, they take it on and they make sure that they're doing what they're doing, but they need to be educated. So capacity building, we did some training exercises with them, show them some monitoring. We had Mangrove Action Project who does training all over the world. And I love that because they like literally Sri Lanka everywhere and they can help us, and adapt here. And they've been doing work in Grand Bahama and Abaco also with the replanting there, and they've done workshops there. So you train and you empower and you build capacity within the community, not just professionals and not just within the government. So the community members are knowledgeable and they know what to do because they're the ones who are on the ground, who are looking out their windows and passing by every day, and they can see when something's wrong, or like, hey, that's not supposed to go like that. I see it die out, or, I haven't seen any birds, for a while this migratory season. What's going on? Can y'all come and check on it? They're the ones on the ground, the eyes and the ears. So you have to train them and empower them to make those kind of calls, to open their eyes to these things and then report it, and then we follow up on it because we have such a large archipelago. It's hard to have people on the ground and eyes and ears on everything. That's one of the issues we have, even with Bahamas National Trust and all their parks and policing our waters. But if the citizens are empowered to take ownership of, hey, I see people illegally harvesting grouper or pouching or whatever, they can call these things out like, hey, that doesn't look like the right size conch, or hey, those lobster tails look short. But if we aren't trained, or they're not trained to look at these things or identify or have their eyes open, then they're not gonna help, and be our eyes and ears on the ground. So, I would say tourism is everybody's business. Environmental, definitely. Sustainability, conservation is everybody's business, and has everybody at every level to be engaged in it, and especially the kids. That's why I like to get into the schools with the kids, because they're gonna, them children, once them,
they can tell their parents.
Listen, we had a beach cleanup. We had a cleanup at Davis Creek the other day, and one pile of children from Fresh Creek Primary School. I was so amazed, and I love that they came and they brought their parents. Or if their parents couldn't bring them, I was like, you have to drop me to the Miss Stacy say you have to drop me, or Miss Wood, Principal Woodside say, and we cleaning up, and they were like, why all this trash here? These people so nasty. What they doing to my environment? And I was just like, yeah, get them, tell them this is your country. This is you're gonna have to live with whatever they're doing here. So get on them about this, and they're looking over that. What they doing? Why they building that there? And that's the mouth of the creek. How they could put that there? Miss Stacy, that don't make no sense. I was like, no, it doesn't, sweetie. And if a child could see that don't make no sense, like what is y'all doing? Like
out
what?
Of the mouth of babes.
Out of the mouth of babes. And a child shall them. I was like, so I love to get into the schools and and get the children trying to it's where it is, because they're the future and they're going to take this on. So they may not turn out to be environmentalists like us, but they're going to be environmentally conscious lawyers, environmentally aware doctors. They're going to be environmentally aware in all these other professions, engineering or whatever. And so we have to make sure that we get them indoctrinated, and it becomes a weight, it's a value, it's intrinsic in them, and not just another add-on thing. It has to become a part of who we are, a value system. And that's what happens in Bhutan. Like, it's a part of them. Like, but it's so clean, nobody throwing nothing out the window. That's a part of them. Like, they even like, I didn't see a bunch of garbage bins, but nobody's littering and nobody's picking up after nobody. Like, it's just clean. Like, how do we get to that point? Because I'm tired of having beach cleanups. Like, these grown nasty people need to learn how to clean up after themselves, how to not mess up, and like, how do we get to that point? And I had a conversation and someone, I think it's Gowan Bo, when we were on a panel, and he was like, we have lost our minds. And you could see that in, the crime and everything that's happening, but even little things like taking pride and care, in our environment, and not littering, and how we treat and care for others. It's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah. And I think one of the words you said is such an important one, to empower people to want to take up ownership for this. And like you said, the building capacity and building awareness is helpful. And definitely starting with those kids, because I've been hearing a lot of amazing stories of children being the ones to call out the adults in their life and in their family. So that's where the heart is. But then we also got to keep pecking away at the parents. And I know I see a question in the comments that I think is a really good one to segue into some of our next topics.
Okay.
Ancelino Davis, Dr. Ancelino Davis, asks, what would you bring from your top 5 countries back home to the Bahamas? And I'm actually curious, can you first say what your top 5 countries are? Because we know that Bhutan is number one.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Like I haven't really gone through the list and gone through. Yeah, Bhutan is number one. Japan was number two. Definitely. Fiji, I loved Fiji. Fiji was up there in the top five for sure. Dominica, yeah, I love Dominica just because of the nature and how and quickly they tie into everything. I don't know if I could add Turks and Caicos because it's like home. So their segue, that's kind of like cheating because they're definitely.
You guys would say us.
I know, right? But it's still. I think they're in my top. That's my top four, and I think my last one will actually Greenland. And I love Greenland, yeah, and not just because it was at the, I got to go to kind of like ground zero of the whole climate change thing, and you got to see, like literally see sheets of ice melting and dropping into the water, right? You got to see and talk to persons that were, talking about why is there, it's harder than it usually is, and we have to change the way that we fish and harvest and live and everything because of these climate changes. But yeah, Greenland will have to be my top five. And I think some of the things that I love, we already talked about Bhutan at length, so I'm not gonna go back to them. Japan, I love Japan, their efficiency. When it comes to their culture, how they lay out and their transportation system, etc. I think that was very unique. I love that, and you can get around very easily to where you need to go. And then I love when I go to countries, and I can't remember which country it was, but everything was about recycling. Everything was about recycling. They didn't allow any plastic bottles at all and I always like this. I travel with my water bottle, so that was good for me. For some tourists, it was a culture shock because they were like, "Oh, we don't drink from the tap." They were like, "Well, this water is for you. You don't have any other options, really." Right.
You drink that or die. Like,
yeah, and they're like, it's pure, and they have signs everywhere to let you know, and they educate persons on how their water is and where it comes from. Even like, it wasn't Fiji, but it was another country. But Fiji, I actually got to drink Fiji water, and I was like, this is why. And I'm like, why is it so pure? And you got to see the source of it, and what they were doing there. So yeah, definitely some of recycling, etc. One of the things I loved. Okay, so Maldives. I'm gonna need to talk to someone in security because they have the court system here on the high court where you go and have your trial and everything. And then when you're found guilty, you are put on a boat and sent over to another island to the prison.
There you go.
And I was like, I love this. Let's see how we can get this over here in the Bahamas.
We have plenty keys. We have plenty
keys. Put them on one key. You have some issue in the detention center. I was like, I love this concept because they're away from the mainstream population, right? And then you reduce that. I'm like, if they jump, where they going? Like, where you going? Like, it's shark infested waters or whatever, right around the key. Like,
most of the demons can't swim. Like,
right? So much less. So judge. And I love that concept of separating. And they did that with other things too. So they had a separate key for other activities because their mainland was a little small. They didn't have the space also. And also to separate out and keep those activities and those people away from the main society. I think that was one of the reasons why they also did it. So I love that concept. And then just different types of practices. I'll always do a mangrove tour. It's there, and I look to see what kind of mangrove because I love mangroves and I love mangrove restoration projects. I like to see what they're doing in those kind of countries. And so yeah, those are some. I'm sorry, I should have listed them and numbered them, but those are some of the areas and some of the things that I love. Even like used oil, and I guess because I have more knowledge of what they're doing, so I worked on a project with the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency where I had to look at used oil storage and getting rid of used oil and waste oil, something we don't really look at on all the small island developing states around the world. So it was like all of them, and I had to look at their practices. and everywhere. And they had so many, different ways and so many things that they were doing, because it's a challenge here too. And I really, then was like, yeah, we could do that. Like, that's definitely something that we could do. And I actually got to see some of that, when I travel, even though it wasn't for work, I'll ask, I'll look, and see and try to find out, hey, what do y'all do with y'all used oil, or any kind of hazardous waste. So that's what I'm working on now, with the POPs implementation plan, national implementation plan update, and also hazardous materials stockpiling, trying to see where we have them, and then trying to find out how we're going to get rid of them off the different islands in the Jeff Islands projects.
Yeah.
So I love that, looking at different islands and see what they're doing, and see if we could replicate or use some of the resources and tools and skills that they have for addressing these problems.
Right. That's so much exciting stuff. And I love that you started sharing a bit about some of the work that you're doing, because you are a world traveler, but you also do work.
Yeah, I gotta pay for this. People are like, how do you pay for this? You got a sugar daddy or something? I was like, no, I don't. I work. I work. I have to pay for my own stuff. And the good thing is I work for myself now. Yeah. So it affords me the freedom to work while I travel. Especially COVID actually did that and helped, because, we realized, we can work on some of these projects remotely. You don't have to be sitting up at someone's desk in your face, and you're still productive. And so I get to travel while I work, at times, and do some of these projects. But yeah, those are some of the projects I'm working on. I mentioned the mangrove restoration project out here. Also the POPs national, the persistent organic pollutants. We like to use acronyms in environment. I was like, POPs, what's POPs? I'm like, persistent organic pollutants, the national implementation plan update for the Stockholm Convention. So we're updating that. I'm the national project lead for that. And a similar project is also looking at hazardous materials stockpiles in the whole region. And so coming up with methods to dispose of them, first inventorying them, making sure they're secure and safe, and then coming up with methods to dispose of them. And all of these are under the GEF, Global Environmental Fund, funded Jeff Islands project. And island stands for it's really like eliminating low and, I know, right? Low and non chemicals, and it deals with dealing with chemicals in the islands. And so these projects are happening around all the different islands, especially the ones in our region. And so really good to be working on those projects. Also some solar projects that are going on in the country. I serve as environmental social policy coordinator for some of those solar projects for IDB grant that we have. Nice. So we're looking at putting, a whole bunch of solar systems. We have a lot of money to put up solar systems. Renewable energy is something we have to, move towards, and not being so fossil fuel dependent. Yes. And so, I keep busy. I keep busy. But I'm not opposed to, so I'm like, let people say, if you hear that Stacy got a full-time job, that's not out of the question either, because, it's just, we were talking offline about this. Yeah. Banks aren't necessarily, there's some other goals in life that I want to, have, and it's kind of hard being a entrepreneur and self-employed person to reach some of those goals. It's not, and that's one of the things I wish that we can do as a country, is move to where entrepreneurship is not, we make it easier for entrepreneurs to do things, and to, get loans and to actually move forward without feeling that you have to be on someone's job, to get a job letter and to do things. Because a lot of times these jobs hold you back from your real purpose, and what you really want to do and what you're doing, but you stay there and you're stuck there because, well, I need to pay the mortgage and I need the bills to be, and that kind of thing. And, we have to move, we have to move where passion and purpose, that we start prioritizing those things, and not necessarily a job, So
I think even just, you've shown too how beneficial it can be to have this balance of being able to do work remote and also seeing the world, because now that also trickles back into your work, right? You have these new perspectives and you see these new ideas, and you're able to expand and like broaden your skill set. And on that same point, I'm curious for myself, but I'm sure there are some viewers that are too. What are some of the kind of steps that someone would need to take to almost kind of walk in your shoes? Like, what are the certifications that you think are key for people to get done? Do they necessarily need to always get a college degree? I know a lot of times I do try to point out on my show that there are ways to get into the field that might not necessarily always need to be through academia. So I'd love to hear you talk a bit about some of the ways that someone could build capacity within themselves to kind of, be in the same safety, health, and environmental field that you are clearly
Right.
an expert in, that I'm so blown away about.
Yeah, so yeah, it doesn't necessarily, especially on the safety field, necessarily getting a degree in it or whatever. There are lots of certifications, lots of courses, some of them free, that you can do. If you decide not to, even like let's start from like high school. There are clubs you can join. There are magnet schools with environmental program. I know my brother, he went to CV Bethel, so he was able to come through that tutelage with the Ketos and Marcia Musgrove, and then be picked as a best scholar and go to the island schools and have that exposure. And I know a whole slew of them, Stefan, a whole bunch of them who
Yeah.
went through the process also, who became, not that they're now in environmental directly still, but they're still doing a lot of great work. And it started from in high school, and it started from that introduction there, not necessarily a formal education, and then going on, even to BTVI, if you start to go technical, right? And it depends on which area you go. If you're going into the tourism aspect, if you're going to go into sustainable tourism, or even like meat flats fishing or fly fishing or whatever, even part of those courses, they have sustainability and conservation that's built into it. So when you're in those fields, you're also, tied to the environmental and conservation field, and you can start to make and you can make those contributions. So those are different certifications, and then you have different, you have different organizations that you could join. I saw I saw Lino on there, Bahamas educated in natural and geographical science, the being group, join the beings group and get a mentor, see what we're talking about and some of the career paths that we've had, and some of the
Scholarships that we share.
and scholarships. I
Yeah.
always tell people, I did not pay a dime, like a dime for school. I used to get change from my scholarships because I had more scholarships than I had my school fees. And I thank God for, Life with Key Foundation. And that's why now I want to go back to finish my PhD. And I'm finding out, I'm like, I don't know what it is to pay for school. That I'm finding hard to come to terms with that. So unless someone, give me another scholarship or pay for this, I don't know if that's gonna happen, because so much free education is out there. And not just for degrees, but just for certifications or courses, short courses that are out there that you can take, that you can take and that you can actually go if you want to learn more about sustainability. If you're in energy or in engineering and you want to, go down that path and looking at renewable energy and solar systems and how you can get there. Even architects, you help people, or my brother's doing architecture. Now they have green building and LED, LEED, and you could be a green architect. So looking at certifications and courses that can help you, even if you're already in a profession, there are areas where you can now become sustainably minded or environmentally conscious in your profession. We have a lot of things, businesses, even in banking, you have green financing now. You have ESGs, environmental, sustainable, ability governance that is happening in all the companies. So no matter what area you're in, there is an opportunity for you to be environmentalist or a sustainable, look at sustainability or conservation. I mean, any area, and I can go through all of them. So it's not necessarily, the path is going to be different from everyone. And even if you're already on a path, it's never too late to gain more knowledge and look for free, courses or certifications that may, take you combined with what you're already doing. Because I always talk about that. I always talk about the swirl, about doing what your profession is and what you're good at and what your passions are, and combining those to create something that's beautiful and that you enjoy. So you're not just working for a paycheck, that you're doing something passionate about, that's going to make a difference for you, your children, the future of this country, and that's going to make a mark.
Definitely. I love that. I think it is always, I always try to tell people, you could be a generalist or you can be an expert. You can pick up a little bit, you could pick up a lot, but it's always about doing the things that you're interested in, because your passion is what's going to carry you through those hard times. And of course, pay is important. Pay is always important, but getting paid 100K for your annual salary is great. But if you're doing something you don't like, it's not ever going to be fulfilling. So pursue your dreams, pursue any certification that you need. And again, like we pointed out, Beings is such a great group to be involved in, because I find that's honestly the most unique set of individuals in the country. No one
Yeah.
can tell me any two people in the Beings group are the same. And I love that there's so many intersections and so many differences where we can come together on
Mhm.
different things, and we can also learn more about other things that we're not already involved in. So
Right.
shout out
Exactly.
again to
Again,
Leo for the brainchild behind that. But I
shameless
do
plug.
want to get through a couple more questions, and I'm really curious to know for you, well, what's next as far as your travel, but also as far as your career? I know you mentioned a bit about the PhD, but are there any upcoming projects, any more upcoming travel that you have soon?
Yeah, definitely. So upcoming projects, I'm continuing with these same projects I have. And that's the thing as a consultant, you have to keep going. I don't know what's going to come up and I get, and I can go after. So that's going to be, we'll see how that goes. But definitely upcoming travels. This is, I'm manifesting every show I'm on, every time I'm manifesting Africa this year because I am.
Mm.
That's my country for this year, my continent, and all the countries in Africa. I'm focusing more on Africa and travel to Africa this year. I booked my first trip coming up in the Easter. I'm super excited. Going to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. We talked about it a little bit because you Rwanda, Kenya, and then Tanzania, and then Zanzibar. Because listen, I'm an island girl. I can have to find myself on one lay up on someone beach with my mermaid tail, and the sand gotta be white, and because we beach snobs, so I be comparing everybody beach to ours.
Listen,
And Zanzibar, I see, is pretty close, so I'm
yeah,
really excited about that. I'm really excited about that trip, and see what they're doing over there.
so I am curious if you had, because obviously you've done a lot of travel, and if you had any sort of like sustainable travel tips for someone who might be like, oh, well, how do what are some sustainable tips and tricks that you have while you travel?
I know. I'm glad you mentioned that because I've been to 103 countries, right? So over
103.
103. So I had this big 100 country goal and I set it out. I didn't set out to have that goal at the beginning, but when I realized I was close to it, I made it a thing because I'm very goal driven. We overachievers. I have to be working towards something. It has to be a smart goal. It gotta be, it gotta be time. It gotta be specific, measurable, achievable.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta have it, And I always tell people about the whoop method. If you just have a goal, a dream without a plan is just a wish. But you have a wish, you look at the outcomes that you have, and then you look at what obstacles may actually prevent you from those outcomes, and then you put in place a plan. So that's called the whoop method. So I always run to play whoop. There it is.
Whoop method. Okay,
WOOP. So you have a wish. So my wish was, I'm going to travel to like over 100 countries. And my outcome is to have these 100 countries. So what are the obstacles that may come in my way? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck with their goals and their dreams, is that they don't anticipate what the obstacles may be. And so you get blindsided when they happen because you don't have a plan in place to overcome them, right? So some of my obstacles when I, traveling was like, okay, I don't have enough money, or I get a full-time job, or life may happen. So how am I going to overcome this? Okay, make sure I have a travel account and I have emergency funding. I had an issue where my credit cards and stuff was stolen when I was traveling. And so I had to quickly overcome that to make sure I could rebound. And because I'm a safety person, I do risk in my head all the time, risk and controls and putting in contingency plans and corrective measures. That's just kind of innate in me. Yeah. And then you have a plan, right? And then you have a plan and you do it. And then I'm also a systems person. Like my logo is plan, do, check, act, right? So you plan, you do it, you check it, and then you act on it. And and that's it's kind of innate in me. I talk about it.
Say it again.
Plan, do, check, act. Yeah, plan, do, check, act. And that's what all the systems are about. And I'm a systems person. So safety management systems, environmental management systems, which I set up for companies. It's all about having systems in place to control things so that when something goes wrong, things aren't being controlled by a person, things aren't being controlled by situations. It's a system that's in place. So once you have these systems in place, it's easier to reach goals. It's easier to address things when they happen, and you continuously looking at them. So it's continuous improvement. And it's just really a better approach, not just for companies and environmental and safety, but in life in general. So I like this morning, I was just, when I was out on the beach, I had my planner, I had my diary and, everything, and doing my weekly assessments. Did I reach my goals last week? What do I have to do this week to make sure that I'm on point and on target for reaching my goal, etc. So I'm always looking at those things. I'm not just flying off by the whim of my hat. Oh, there's a country, let me go over there. There's some method to my madness.
I love that. I love that.
Method to my madness. So there's so many things that we can do, and we can ways that we can approach and get through things. But yeah, I have a lot of plans, like I said, but I don't just wishes. I have plans, and I have plans in place. They're written and they're goals. And sometimes I get a little off track, but then I get like the whole PhD thing. It's not about, but when I get serious about it and I decide I'm going to focus on that, that's it. It's over. It's done. It's a gun. It's just not a priority right now, So yeah, I'm not going to make any more money if I do it. And I really want to teach at some point, and I want to do it, but I have it before I get 50, and I have 5 more years. So there's some time. So I have some time.
So and I know I have your Instagram up there, but if you can just give a quick shout out, like how can somebody who is, whether they're interested in your travel or your work, stay tuned, stay involved, or maybe even if you have any opportunities that you can share, which is either via volunteering, internships, or mentorships. Can you talk a bit about some of that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not to that point yet because I'm so I would say unstable. Like I'm just all over the place. It's kind of hard for me to even have employees or whatever. Because I do like project by project. If I have a project and I need extra help on it, then I will look for someone to help me. It's usually someone I'm already familiar with, who I've worked with before, or a student, I can bring on and kind of mentor. So I have some people. If you want to be joined on that list, you can, reach out to me. And usually I kind of pull from that pool, but it's hard to have people, all the time because I really don't know where I'm going to be sometimes next week, so it's kind of hard to do that. But I'm at Jess Consultants. I'm also at jess.2.the.world. Anyway, on Instagram for my travels. Just look up my name. It should be only one, Eustacia Jennings, but you have all these hackers and cloners out there. Yeah. We're just on there. And then just shoot me an inbox. I've had people inbox me or WhatsApp me, for recommendations or suggestions in how they're entering into the field or looking for jobs. And I try to point them in the right direction and talk to them. So I do one-on-one. But I really wish that I could do, and hopefully I'll get stable enough where I can do more. Mentoring and that kind of thing. And I think it'll come also when I do get into academia, and with students, etc. Because I love that aspect of it.
Nice. It's beautiful. And so I do have 2 more questions. The next one is definitely, I'm very interested to hear, who is someone in the sector, whether it's a local person or international person, that inspires you and why?
Yeah, so my number one person is Dr. Kathleen Sullivan Seeley. I love Dr. Seeley. Oh my goodness, she was one of my mentors. She was my boss. And when I was doing my PhD, before my PhD, and she would be at UB, at COB at the time, and she would hire students, and she didn't just have them working for pennies and as slaves. She would pay us, and we would go on these trips with her, and we'll do environmental impact assessments with her, and we'll see how it is in the real world, out on the boat. And she is bad, like she is everything. She's driving the boat, she's scubaing, everything. And that's what was my thing. I can't scuba because I have a eustachian tube dysfunction, which makes it hard. I can't, balance underwater and stuff, and I can't, my airs are always, so I can't do that. But love Dr. Seeley. She was at UB, University in Miami, at University of Miami. She's now at Zoma doing wonderful things in the environment there, even though she's retired. And I need to make it down there to see her, but shout out to Dr. Seeley. Yes.
I think I need to get her on the show. That's what.
Yes, you do. She'll talk. Like, she has years of experience, been in the Bahamas for so long. Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. Yes.
That's good to know. And so my last question, and whether you choose it to be maybe a mantra that you follow, a quote that you love to read, or even just like a lessons learned over your time in the field, what are some final thoughts that you'd want to give to our viewers?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, this, it's such a beautiful world out there, a huge, beautiful world that God has created with so many different things to see. And yes, we're in the Bahamas and we're blessed. I mean, like, so blessed to be in a country that's blessed with sun, sand, sea, nature, beautiful people, that we have to do all that we can to conserve what we have, that we have to make an effort. It has to be everybody's business, it has to be a part of who we are, to see that we preserve this country for future generations and that we enjoy it, and not just, allow people thousands and thousands of dollars to enjoy what we have right here every day. And I like to say that. And so my favorite quote is also by Baba Diem. It says, in the end, we will only conserve what you love. You'll only love what you understand. You will only understand what you are taught. And so that conserve, understand, love, taught. And that's where it comes down to teaching our people, our young people, education again. And you don't have to just teach in a classroom. It's teaching through life lessons, teaching through travel, teaching through experience, and just getting out there in nature, but being taught and becoming more aware of what we have, what needs to be done, understanding that, and then moving into conservation. And that's the path that we need to go. Just getting people more engaged. And yeah, that's where I'm at. Just, I try to inspire people to do more, to be more, and to, I say, live out loud, love out loud, and laugh out loud. That's my that's my mantra. Live out loud, love out loud, and laugh out loud. I'm a happy person. I'm loving life out loud, no matter what the circumstances are. You have that joy. Yes, things may be crazy around what's going on, and may feel a little doomsday with climate change and everything, but there's so much to enjoy now, and there's so much that we can do, and there's so much, the path that we take, we can enjoy ourselves in making changes. We can enjoy ourselves in making a difference, in this beautiful world that we live in.
I love that. And even the quote that you had said earlier, and I'm definitely gonna have to ask you to send me that. I had read that like maybe a few years ago, and I could never figure out like what the exact wording was or who said it. And so, that you said that, because I love that quote, because like, to your point, you're not going to do it if you don't know it, if you don't love it, if you're not taught it. Like, right. And these are the pillars of getting people, like we were saying earlier, to have that ownership for these projects, for these things in our environment, because it's not just for us. Conservationists don't do nothing for ourselves. We do it for y'all. We do it for people. I think conservationists and environmentalists are some of the most like selfless people, because we have this passion for something that is far bigger than ourselves,
Right.
And so I love that quote. All I have to say, I love that quote. Your energy is so contagious. I thoroughly enjoy speaking with you, and I'm so excited to continue following your travel journeys, your work journeys, and I'm so thrilled that I got to have you on my show and speak with you about so many of these important topics.
Yes, thank you for having me. Let's splash around. I always like to talk to fellow mermaids.
Yes, I love it. We definitely have to do a beach day, a big mermaid beach day soon.
Yeah,
come down to Honduras. But I also want to say thank you so much to my viewers for hanging out with us again and riding the wave for another episode of Siren Sundays. Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you so much, my viewers, and I will see you all next week.